So the year was 1986, and I had just done a comic book spoof of the Ninja Turtles with Eclipse Comics called The Adolescent Radioactive Black Belt Hamsters with my high school cartooning friend Parsonovich, who drew it. And it turned out to be a sleeper hit. It sold about 56,000 copies the first printing, and Eclipse wanted to keep it going. So in the first year, Parsonovich didn't think he could keep up with the rigors of a bi-monthly or even a quarterly book. So we had to find a new artist team. And so Sam Kieth, who I had met through various conventions in Northern California, said he would be available to draw it. And so we had a penciler, and that was Sam. And so Sam drew issues 6, 7, 8, and then 9, which was just a little bit of a vignettes that he had a few pages in. He also did the cover to Hamsters 3D number 4. So then flash forward to 1992, Eclipse folded. And so Bill Mouse, my wife, and I decided to launch Parody Press Comics. And in that, we were going to bring back the Hamsters. And so we reprinted some of the earlier Eclipse issues. And here's a sample poster that we did in the Parody Press Parade, which we would only send to distributors. So those are kind of hard collector's items to find. Sam also drew the cover to The Pummeler, which was a Punisher spoof. And this is one of the classic Kieth pieces I think a lot of fans like a lot. It's just over the top. We also did a Parody Press Parade flyer for that, which folds out. It's like 8.5 by 11, and then when you fold it out, it turns into like a 4. I think it's like 24 by 36 mega poster. And these things are still on eBay from time to time, but pretty hard to find. So if you want something that's like larger than life, you can look for the Parody Press Parade with the Pummeler or the Hamsters. So this book came out in like 1992, I believe, 93. Back then, digital coloring wasn't as popular as it is now. So we had it airbrushed by Bill Mouse. And then Sam's cousin, Dave Feiss, who was a veteran animator, I think he worked on Ren and Stimpy, he contributed a one-page story, which I had the pleasure of writing, called The Mumbler. But you can just kind of see Sam was really coming into his own with his inking. You know, he's got the mega biceps that everybody loves, the triceps. Very Simon Bisley-esque, he would say. And he did a few other covers for us, like for Parody Press, like Spineless Man, $2,099. Again, this was another airbrushed piece that Bill Mouse colored. And there's another shot of it with like a different lighting. So Sam was awesome, you know, very easy to work with, really laid back guy, and we always loved his work. And you know, at the time he was starting to just take off with Marvel Comics, doing Marvel Comics Presents with Wolverine, Ghost Rider, and so his cover rate was starting to get up there. And he also worked on Zen with another publisher that we started to collaborate with, and that was Steve Stern's Zen Comics. And we did Zen under Entity Comics for quite a while, and we had a nice chromium trading card that we did to promote the book when we had it, and Sam's artwork is featured on that. You can still probably find those on eBay. So anyways, going back to Parody Press, this is the cover for the Black Belt Hamsters Death of Bruce graphic novel, which collects issues 6, 7, 8, 9, and also has Target Airboy in it. I believe Target Airboy came out in like 1987, 1988 with Eclipse, and it's almost like Hamsters, the finale. It's the only color book that we ever did that had the Hamsters in it, and it's a team up with the characters from Airboy. And I think Chuck Dixon just did a crowdfunding Airboy comic book in 2020, which they did a remastered Sam Kieth cover. They offered it, you know, with just the Airboy logo, and it was recolored. and I believe it did ship, and there were some signed editions available that were signed by Sam. But just a little trivia question for you there, that Target Airboy was the only color appearance of the Hamsters with Eclipse. And so back to this Parody Press Death of Bruce graphic novel, we printed probably a couple thousand of the softcover and then only 150 of the hardcover editions, which came with a signed trading card by both Sam and I. And you can still find these probably online on eBay or Amazon, but they're going to probably run you like $100. But anyways, let's get into this interview with Sam. So my plan is to read you this interview page by page. And so this first page is the foreword that I wrote to this interview. And the interview happened back in 1993 in the fall. And I recorded our conversation on the phone with a cassette tape recorder. But unfortunately, I don't have that original recording anymore, which I wish I did, because then I would just play it and have you listen to it. So I'm just going to do the best that I can to recreate our conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and read the foreword, and then we'll get into the interview. It says, Sam Kieth is no stranger to the comics world. For nearly a decade, Kieth has entertained comics fans with his fantastically detailed artwork on titles as varied as Aliens for Dark Horse, Adolescent Radioactive Black Belt Hamsters for Eclipse, DC's Sandman, and Marvel Comics Presents featuring Wolverine for Marvel Comics. Kieth cut his teeth on Kumiko's Primer comic book in the early 1980s, which featured the debut of one of Kieth's own creations, a wily renegade rabbit called Maxx the Hare. Since then, Sam has essentially rocketed his way to comic stardom and is one of the most sought-after comic book cover artists in the business, and he consistently ranks as one of Wizard Magazine's top 10 hottest artists. Kieth has taken another one of his characters called The Maxx to the hottest new comic book company in ages, Image Comics. Written by Bill Loebs, his author collaborator on DC Piranha Press's Epicurus the Sage graphic novels, The Maxx promises to be one of the grittiest heroes in the graphic medium. The Maxx will debut in the pages of Image's first anthology title, Darker Image, in 1993, with new characters by Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee. Sam graciously took a moment out of his busy schedule to talk to me about his comic book past, present, and future, and also about TRICEPS, Frank Sinatra, and sleeping in bathtubs. This interview was conducted by phone on October 14th, 1993, shortly after Sam had just returned home to Sacramento, California, from a well-deserved vacation in Hawaii with his wife. Me. Sam, what's the latest projects that you have going on at various companies that you can tell us about? Sam. No. You've got to make this fun-filled and humorous. Like, you wacky Sam, do you remember when you and wacky Mike Dringenberg used to do that wacky book with me? Those were the good old days. Sleeping in the bathtub, piled in a hotel room. Me, with the Eclipse editors on the floor. Sam. You were trying to get Enchanter off the ground, and Mike Dringenberg was saying, I'm not sure if I should do Enchanter. Me. Well, yeah, I don't actually miss those days because now we get paid. Sam laughs. Well, I don't recall that you were starving, not with Hamsters. You did pretty well with all that stuff. Actually, a lot of the books that came out right after the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were looked down upon, but the Hamsters were less frowned upon. Hamsters had more respect than most. Do you know what I mean? Me. That's true. Now let me ask you, you had just come out of working for Kumiko a little bit. Would you consider Hamsters your first break in comics, or Mage that plunged you into the spotlight, or neither? Would you consider Marvel your big break that launched your career to where it's at now? Sam. That's a good question. Me. Was Hamster something that you showed to editors when you were trying to break into the big two? Sam laughs, followed by me laughing. No, but then on the other hand, neither was Mage because I was just inking it while Matt Wagner was penciling it. I was desperately afraid that I would be, quote unquote, the guy who inked Mage, end quote, for the rest of my life. I was pretty pleased to do the Hamsters with you because you were really cool about letting me contribute a lot of ideas. As Dean Mullaney, Eclipse's publisher, said, "We're going to publish this sucker until it doesn't breathe, so you guys can just do this." Me. It was a good, free-flowing exchange. It wasn't like we were constrained. Eclipse was very flexible with what they let us do. Sam. Some people probably were put off that we had to change artists midstream from the original ARBBH artist Parsonovich, but I was coming off of inking Mage, and I really wanted to pencil. Some of the best times I had was penciling something where expectations were pretty low, because you were thinking this was just a humor book. The stories we tried to do were, how do I say this without sounding like we're working on the second coming of Ben-Hur? When you did things with Parsonovich, rarely would you do the death of Bruce. And remember the thing with the gravestone where he's hammering it and switching back and forth? We tried to take it quasi-seriously. Me. We did, which is kind of what I like to do with the Hamsters in the future. Sam. I mean, Ty Templeton's Hamsters were better in that they were more comic-like, more tongue-in-cheek. Me. Yeah, I think people were pretty shocked that we would go as far as killing off a funny animal in a quote-unquote serious manner. Thinking back on that, I don't know if I killed Bruce because I really wanted to be innovated, or if sales were so bad that I would do anything to get them going again. The truth comes out. Sam. There's motivation between good sales and wanting to do an artistic statement, and it's forever going to be blurry with comic books. Me. This is true. Sam. There are a few people out there that can truly call themselves artists, and we can all see their rib cages for it. Me. Let me ask you, how did you come up with Captain Tree and Bush Boy? Sam. I dug around in my closet. You know that. Me. Are these high school characters you came up with, or? Sam. Yeah, you know. They were guys I doodled. I had forgot all about them. Yep. They made an appearance in this graphic novel, and you made Frank Zappa look enormously like Infidel Castro. Or should that be vice versa? Sam. You know, there's a version of that character that's actually going to be a villain in an upcoming Image Comics thing. I've changed around his nose and the way he looks. Me. Is that right? Wow, that's great. Sam. It's just like the same characters in the backup stories I do keep popping out. Me. What about Iz? Will Iz have his own comic book? Iz is a character Sam created and drew that appeared in Fantagraphics' Critters anthology book in the late 1980s. Sam. No, but he's going to be in there, kind of like a cross between the Smurfs and Gremlins. There's a lot of Iz's in the Maxx book, and they all have teeth, and they're a little more violent. Me. Does the Maxx take place in modern-day reality, or is he in his own type of world? Sam. Both. Me. Both? How come? Sam. Well, when he sees the world, he thinks he's living in our barbaric time with monsters and this old prehistoric world, and that's what he thinks is going on. But this girl he lives with, Julie, is a social worker that gives him injections to keep him from hallucinating. Me. Oh. Sam. She's in the modern world. She's convinced that Maxx is a homeless person that has problems and thinks that all of this is going on. Me. Another very interested. Oh. Sam. But he thinks that she just can't deal with the fact that they're in a prehistoric world and pretends all of this is going on. Me. Very strange. So, is the Maxx human or is he an alien? What is his origin? Sam. Well, there's a definite origin, but I just can't give it away as of yet. The best thing to say is that Max's basic job is to take care of this girl, And eventually we find out whose version of reality it is. And it's kind of one of those schmaltzy, stupid things that we're trying to do as something that's deep, but it'll wind up being kind of stupid and dorky anyways. Me. Does it have some kind of similarities to Dale Keown's character, The Pit, in that he seems to befriend a little boy and now your character takes a liking to this girl? Sam. Not unless Dale Keown's character has sex with a little boy. Me. Oh, man. I hope not. Sam. Actually, I hope not, too. He laughs. Me. They'd have to call it Bad Image or something. Sam. Actually, there's a certain amount of similarity, but I haven't seen the first Pit. I looked through it at San Diego and met Dale, and he seemed like a really cool guy. And we talked about doing a crossover of our characters, but I really have to see what his character does in the first issue and vice versa. You know how Wolverine a long time ago was supposed to be gritty, and then since then he doesn't kill and he has a healing factor, so he never really gets hurt? And Lobo is gritty, but he's silly and gritty. Well, my guy is just gritty. Me. That's it. Sam. Yeah, well, within reason, I mean. Gee, after Spawn, how violent can you get? Me. On a level of 1 to 10, with 10 being Spawn, what would you rate Maxx on a violence level? Sam. Oh, it's not going to be nearly as nearly as far as Spawn. Mostly because I don't have any problem with Spawn, but Spawn's more of a horror book. I can't help but have my sense of humor slip out and make things that are violent and gritty silly at the same time. Me. Right. You've always had a talent for doing that. Not many people can do that. I think of Bernie Wrightson. I think he can do that, and I think of you. Sam. It gets on a lot of editors' nerves at Marvel. He laughs. Bill Lopes is writing it, so he's going to have an even hand in this. In other words, if I wrote it, it would probably stink to high heaven. But with him doing it, me. No, I think you underrate your writing ability. Sam. Well, coming from you, that means a lot, Don. Me. How do you deal with fans? Do you have people coming up to you, drooling, really nervous, with palms sweating? Sam. Most people feel that they can talk to me. People get nervous around people like Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee. Either they're awestruck by these guys or they say, look at the lines. They say, there's no way I'm going to get in the McFarlane line, but hey, check out the Sam Kieth line. There's only 5 people there. No, here we go. Here he is. We can talk to him for a long time. Me. I think out of all the people I've met in the professional business, if there's one guy that you can spend a relaxing afternoon with without feeling tense and just shoot the breeze, it's you. Sam. Yeah, but Dale's pretty easy to get along with that way. Me. He seems like it too. Sam. He doesn't answer the phone, but in person he's nice. Me. He had quite a line at the 1992 San Diego Con. I thought it was the line to the snack bar, and then I saw he was there. Sam. He's real popular, and he has quite a bit more of a following because he's actually done books for Marvel. Me, instead of just covers? Sam. Well, you see, he's even better than me, and because he does the books and the covers. I'm like the paint on the car without being the engine. Me. Well, I wouldn't say that. Everyone likes your stuff in Marvel Comics Presents. Sam. Yeah, but some people are disappointed that I don't do more insights, though. Me. Can you tell the fans out there why you opt to do covers as opposed to inside? Is it a time factor, or is it just because covers are more lucrative? Or do you enjoy doing more covers because they're the highlight of the book? Or Sam. I'm just kind of a lazy weenie. I mean, for about 10 or 15 years, I've wanted to do covers, and I'll do them for anybody that breathes. Ever notice that for some people, it takes them a long time to get into comics, and they don't always do their best work. It was better work when they were struggling to get in. Me, yeah, you mean when they were hungry? Sam, it would make me angry to think I would get a chance to be offered to do covers for Marvel Comics Presents as a directive and then give up and do bad ones. Me, I think you're improving. I'm not bragging because I'm a publisher, but I really think the Pummeler cover that you did for Parody Press is one of the best pieces I've ever seen from you. Sam, that stuff's tricky. You never know. Like some covers I've done, they bite it, and then some covers work out well. And I don't know any more than you do. I sit down and I think, oh, that one's just great. There's just no rhyme or reason. People think I have some control over it, but I'm just as baffled as this. Me, I think you're blessed with extreme talent. Sam, blessed or baffled? I'd be baffled. Me, how would you feel if Parody Press spoofed your Maxx character? Would you be offended or would you be flattered? Sam, I'd be offended if you didn't. Me, I laugh so shrill that glass is breaking. Sam, hey, I got left out of that Image parody book, Split an Image. I begged Don Simpson to be in it. He said, you're not important enough to be in the parody book. No, he didn't say that. Me, well, I'll tell you what, we're going to do one, but I'm not going to let you in on it until later. And on a side note, that was a Parody Press spoof book that we called The Tax. And we did 2 issues. One was an ash can, the other one was a full-sized black and white comic book. So Sam says, there you go. Take all the cheap shots you can, but don't tell me about it. Me, it's flattering, though. The guy who's drawing it, Mike Taylor, he would rip off his right arm to be next to you for a minute. Sam says, tell him to rip off my art. It would be much better than a right arm. And I said, yes, he's pretty good at doing that, too. You can see your influence in his work. And just so you know, Mike actually got to intern with Sam later on after Sam got to see some of Mike's work. So I think Mike actually traveled down to Sacramento fresh out of high school and spent some time with Sam in his studio. So anyways, getting back to the interview, Sam says he probably likes Simon Bisley and all those other guys. I mean, I was talking to Dale Keown the other day, and he said something about liking Bisley stuff, and Kelly Jones likes his work too. A lot of people have changed their tune about Bisley and the undeniable influence he has for triceps. His triceps, the little line that develops and divides the tricep from the back of the arm, has changed the industry today. Me, I'm looking at the Pummeler poster right now, and I can see that influence. Sam, that tricep influence. Me, that's a pretty gnarly looking tricep on this guy. Sam, the only thing that Dale Keown ever said to me on the first time he called up was, Sam Keith, this is Dale Keown. I'm returning your call. Let me just tell you, you draw the best triceps in the business. And then he hung up. And then I called him back up and said, no, that's just Bisley. He said, well, you're right, but I just wanted to say something nice. Me, when you go to draw a character with humongous triceps, which you're known for, do you use photo references like muscle magazines, or do you just draw from your head? Sam, well, the muscles glamorized to be big in muscle magazines are not the same as ideal superhero proportions. On the other hand, I'm like 300 degrees off from both. So, in Aliens, I tried to be realistic. What I'm doing with Wolverine and Maxx is imagining if I were 12 or 13 years old, what would I like? And in some ways, McFarlane does the same things. Kelly Jones really exaggerates things. When people get older, they'll come back and realize I'm not such a great artist. Me, no. Sam, well, at the time they're reading it, they'll eat it up alive. Me, well, That's your opinion. Sam, it's like this. I don't mean this in any sense of false modesty, but take Mike Drigenberg. Mike is an illustrator, and he also happens to be able to cartoon, but he's technically an illustrator. With the exception of Bill Sienkiewicz, he's the only person I think of out there that can do both. Half of his body is an illustrator, meaning that he could exist in the advertising world and draw at the top of the hat. And draw at the drop of the hat. And he could also be a caricaturist. I'm more of a cartoonist. When I try to stand on my illustration skills, I fall down. I just try to stick to things I know how to do. Me. Have you ever tried to be a commercial graphic artist? Sam. I've had dabblings in it, but the advertising world has not broken down my door. Me. But the comic book world has. It seems like it. Do you still plan to do work for everybody as far as you know? Sam. Yeah, I enjoy doing a little bit of stuff here and there. It's more fun that way and more interesting. I have a short attention span. Me. Are you still going to continue work on Marvel Comics Presents or something else that you can talk about for Marvel? Sam. Oh man, I guess the one thing I should say is that everyone who is doing work for Image has left Marvel or has been fired from Marvel, and I'm going to have to join Jim Lee in saying that since I'm doing work for Image doesn't mean I'll never come back to Marvel or wouldn't still like to do work for them. Probably tomorrow I'm going to talk about whether I'm still going to do Wolverine covers or not because I'm doing Batman covers, probably for the next year or something like that. And then there with the Image stuff, I'm wondering if my Wolverine stuff is looking really boring. If I think I can keep doing cool Wolverine stuff, I'll keep it up. Some friends of mine have been calling up and saying, your Wolverine stuff covers look like you've just been going through the motions. And I don't want to just be doing bad covers. Nobody has the guts to just say, quit it. Me. Do you ever dabble in any painting, or are you strictly a black and white pen and ink artist? Sam. Well, the truth is, I love to experiment and do a painting in a real formal sense or study watercolor, which I've been attracted to, but I'm not done exploring black and white yet. And it seems where I struggle to work with color, black and white comes easier to me. If I were to say I had any strengths, it would be texture in black and white. I'm just glad there's enough room for people that illustrate and can really draw. You ever notice how the people that illustrate are always thumping on the cartoonists? People are saying, McFarlane doesn't know how to draw, and it's kind of like blaming Frank Sinatra for not playing rock. He doesn't have any interest in it. Oh, that was a bad analogy. It's kind of like blaming Tiffany for not being a classical musician. That's even worse. Let's kill that whole analogy thing. I didn't say anything. Me. Don't worry, I'll just fax it to you for your approval before we go to print. Sam. Can you just take out the dumb parts? Me. Anything you'd like to say in closing? Sam. In closing, I'd like to say that as much as I thank Matt Wagner for letting me ink Mage, and as much as I thank Marvel for Wolverine and Dark Horse for giving me Aliens, I'd like to thank you for giving me my first break penciling. Me. You're welcome, Sam, and best wishes on all of your future projects. The end. Hey, thanks for watching this interview with Sam Kieth. And if you want to check out my other projects, I've got one called X-Farce Reloaded. You can look at it at xfarce.com. And I also have another project besides X-Farce coming up called Beard Zerker. And it's going to be a full-color rock and roll warrior adventure with Bill Mouse drawing it. So until next time, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more great content. And until next